Hey everyone, and welcome back. So we got a really interesting request from you guys. You want to talk about Linda McMahon becoming education secretary,
Yeah.
like in Trump's second term,
Yeah.
and you want to know what it means for everyday people? It's definitely a curveball, right? I mean, her background's in pro wrestling, the WWE.
Yeah, it's not the usual path to education policy, is it?
Not really. So that's what we're going to deep dive into today.
Absolutely. Let's try to unpack it.
All right, so to kick things off, we've got all these articles laying out McMahon's career. And wow, it's a wild ride. She built the WWE with her husband Vince,
Yeah.
into this global phenomenon.
Yeah.
Then jumps into politics, tries for the Senate a couple times in Connecticut,
Right.
even heads the Small Business Administration during Trump's first term.
That's interesting. Right. You don't see that every day.
No, not at all.
Oh.
So she hasn't, been in a specifically education role before, but she's got this history of leadership in business and government.
Exactly. And of course, there's the Trump connection, someone who's been pretty vocal about shaking things up in education.
Oh, yeah. Like, who could forget that WrestleMania thing where Trump shaves Vince McMahon's head?
Oh, yeah.
Talk about a statement. But on a serious note, they go way back. And McMahon's been a major Trump supporter even after leaving his administration.
Right. Financially, politically, she's been there.
So that close relationship makes you wonder how much influence she'll actually have.
For sure. And if that loyalty will affect her decisions as education secretary.
Okay, so business background check.
Yeah.
But what about her actual vision for education? What are her plans? We found some stuff about her time on the Connecticut Board of Education. And she seems to be pro-charter schools and school choice. But the details are kind of thin.
Yeah, and that school choice thing, that's a big one. It lets parents pick between different types of schools, public, charter, private.
Right.
Some say it gives parents more control, and boosts competition, but others worry it'll drain funds from public schools, especially in poorer areas.
So how will her stance on school choice actually play out? And what could it mean for families who depend on public schools? That's something we got to dig into.
Definitely. A lot to unpack there. We can't forget the big picture here. Remember Trump campaigned on getting rid of the Department of Education entirely?
Right.
That would be huge for millions of students, teachers, parents.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird, right? He appoints someone to lead a department he wants to eliminate. So is McMahon there to shut it down? Or does she have something else in mind?
Good question. We've seen some clues, like her liking charter schools, which are separate from the regular public school system.
Yeah.
But how that fits with Trump's vision, well, that's still a mystery.
So for those of us who aren't, policy experts, how could these changes or potential changes affect us like in our daily lives?
Let's imagine a family with kids in public school. If money starts going more to charter schools, that could mean less for their local public school.
Right.
Maybe bigger classes, fewer programs, even schools closing down.
That's a big worry for a lot of people. And what about the teachers? They're already dealing with low-pay, overcrowded classrooms. How could McMahon, with her business experience, how could that affect them?
It's possible we'll see more focus on accountability and performance reviews, which could put extra pressure on teachers.
Right.
And then there's the whole thing with teacher unions. They've always been strong supporters of public education.
Yeah.
How she handles that relationship, that'll be crucial.
And we can't forget the students. They're the ones who are most affected by all this.
Yeah.
Will they still get a good education no matter where they live or their family's income?
That's the big question, isn't it? And we got to keep asking it. The point of education should be to give every student the tools they need to succeed. Whether McMahon's way of doing things will actually do that, well, we'll have to see.
We should also think about what this could mean for college. Will her policies affect how much college costs? Student loans, even what degrees and skills are considered important.
Definitely possible. The Department of Education, it's not just K through 12. Any changes at the federal level could trickle down to higher education, too.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's kind of overwhelming.
Yeah.
There's so much up in the air about the future of education in America.
Uncertainty can be scary, but it's also a chance, a chance to have these important discussions, to stay informed about what's at stake, and to make our voices heard.
That's a good point. So what can our listeners do to stay involved and make a difference?
First thing, stay informed. Don't just go by headlines or quick sound bites. Dig deeper. Read articles from different places. Talk to people in your community who are directly affected by all this.
Right, and don't be shy about reaching out to your elected officials. Tell them what you're worried about. What kind of education system you want for your kids in your community.
Your voice matters.
Oh.
Don't forget that the future of education, it's being shaped right now.
Yeah.
And it's important that we're all part of that conversation.
This whole thing really feels like a turning point for education in America.
Hmm.
Like we've got Linda McMahon, this leader who's not from the traditional education world, and a president who's talked about getting rid of the Department of Education completely.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of unknowns for everyday folks.
Yeah, definitely. It's a pivotal moment for sure. A lot riding on the decisions made over the next few years could have a big impact down the line.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into McMahon and her new role, what are some of the big takeaways for our listeners? What should they really keep in mind?
I think the most important thing to remember is this education policy. It's not just some abstract idea or political game. It really affects people's lives. Students trying to get a good education, parents figuring out the school system, teachers trying to do their best in tough situations.
Exactly. We talked about how school choice could affect funding for public schools, how McMahon's business background might change how teachers are evaluated, the whole question mark over the Department of Education's future. It's not just talk. This stuff could really change things for millions of Americans.
And that's why it's so important to stay engaged, to stay informed, and to speak up.
Mm.
Read more than just the headlines. Talk to people in your community. Contact your elected officials. Let them know what kind of education system you want.
We always hear that education is the key to a better future. Right. Well, the future of education is being decided right now. And it's up to all of us to be a part of that decision. Parents, students, teachers, anyone who cares about this country. Your voice matters.
This deep dive, it wasn't just about Linda McMahon. It was about understanding how complicated education policy is, how different approaches could play out, and most importantly, giving you, the listener, the knowledge to be an informed and active citizen.
We've given you a lot to think about, but hopefully it's made you curious, made you think critically, and maybe even inspired you to get involved. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep the conversation going. The future of education is in our hands.
That's right. We've got to work together and make sure it's a bright future for everyone.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.